This is a 1950s Southern church. On Sunday mornings, these wooden pews held congregations that drove the rhythm through synchronized stomps and hand claps. The aggressive piano style of early rock and roll emerged from the mechanics used by accompanists backing these choirs. Historically, the popular piano was treated as a melodic instrument, governed by classical restraint. Gospel players moved away from this, using the instrument to dictate tempo through heavy, syncopated rhythm. The physical approach changed. By striking chords with a stiff wrist, keyboardists used the internal hammers to turn the wooden frame into a percussion instrument. To understand this transition, we can rebuild the rock piano arrangement from the ground up, starting with the bass frequencies and moving toward the higher register. While the resulting sound was energetic, it wasn't chaotic. Every pounding chord relies on an organized liturgical technique that can be reverse-engineered. First, consider the foundational rhythm. In early jazz and popular music, the pianist's left hand typically maintained a steady, non-syncopated 4-on-the-floor beat. While reliable for keeping time, this straight-ahead pacing lacks the internal tension required for rock momentum. The mechanical solution to this was the gospel shuffle. Instead of playing strictly on the downbeat, the player displaces the timing. The left hand strikes the lower octaves in a driving, syncopated pattern, creating an immediate sense of forward propulsion. This timing was designed to match the physical environment of a Sunday service, mimicking the offbeat cadence of a congregation stomping their feet. This timeline illustrates the difference. The top line shows a rigid 4-on-the-floor structure, while the bottom reveals syncopated subdivisions of the shuffle. By placing this uneven pattern in the lower frequencies, the bottom keys become the primary rhythmic engine of the song. Assigning this propulsive responsibility to the left hand allowed the piano to command a rock and roll ensemble. Little Richard, who grew up immersed in the Pentecostal church, utilized this driving piano style outside of its liturgical context. Building on that left-hand shuffle, he added a relentless pattern in his right hand, striking the higher keys in eighth-note triplets. This requires a specific physical posture. The wrist must remain locked, transferring momentum from the arm into a sharp, percussive strike on the keys. As shown here, the right hand isn't playing a delicate melody. It is hammering out rhythmic chord clusters, rapidly repeating in the upper register. In gospel music, these clusters are known as shouts. Church pianists use them to signal a peak in spiritual fervor during a service. Little Richard isolated this audio cue, using these same rhythmic shouts to trigger a peak in secular excitement. Jerry Lee Lewis expanded this vocabulary by integrating the kinetic energy of rural tent revivals. The technical boundary between conducting this fervent atmosphere and playing in a secular roadhouse was thin. Lewis applied the same physical intensity to the stage. His most recognizable technique on the instrument was the glissando, a high-speed, dramatic slide across the entire length of the keyboard. This technique is a descendant of the traditional gospel run, used by church accompanists to transition between verses or build energy for the choir. While the church run was a flourish of grace, it became a high-speed antic on the rock and roll stage. The aggressive theatrics of these artists, standing at benches or kicking over stools, reflected the physical movement common in the revivals of their youth. These physical displays linked the instrument's visual performance to its sonic output, establishing the piano as a vehicle for high-energy stage presence. Beyond rhythm and physicality, early rock relies on a specific harmonic structure for its emotional weight. This diagram shows a standard pentatonic scale. Rock piano operates within this framework, but adds gospel blue notes for tension. By targeting the minor third and flatted seventh, the pianist slurs the notes, striking the flatted key and immediately sliding onto the adjacent major tone. This mechanic mimics the human voice. It translates the microtonal vocal stylings of church choirs onto a fixed-pitched instrument. Because a piano cannot bend a string, the player emulates these vocal slides by striking the blue note as a rapid-fire grace note right before the primary chord. This transition from dissonance to resolution creates the sense of yearning and release that defines the emotional drive of rock. By combining the shuffle engine, the triplet attack, the glissando, and pentatonic slurring, the complete rock arrangement is assembled. The sonic profile of the 1950s was built on the application of these religious musical mechanics to secular rhythm and blues. Moving these techniques from the pews to the stage repositioned the piano from a background accompanist to a rhythmic lead. By adapting the technical vocabulary of the church, these pioneers turned the piano into a self-contained rhythm section capable of commanding the stage. The pioneers of early rock and roll established the techniques of the revival meeting as a primary influence on the rock keyboard style. This was brought to you by Notes and Silences. Thank you for listening.